Welcome back, everybody, to Thursday Night Live. A little bit of a different crew here. The SEC availability report has been coming out every night. Nathan Kane is going to be on Thursday's edition. Unfortunately, a little bit under the weather, trying to get him healthy before the trip to Texas A&M that you and him are taking. So I'm here.
Christian
on
jumps
the show
in
tonight with Jason. Going to be leaning on Jason, the true expert, here at Auburn University Club as we have Thursday Night Live. First off, before we even get into the game, want to thank Auburn University Club, our sponsor, who presents Thursday Night Live. Great spot to be. Jason, we'll talk a little bit more in depth at the end of the show about what you can get here, but just what are a couple of the small things that you can get by being a member at AU Club?
Yeah, no, absolutely. You look at it, and first thing you get is unbelievable food. We came out last week, and there's some new specials, some things, and I'm like, oh, I wish I hadn't eaten already because it looks incredible. But restaurant here, obviously, golf course, fantastic. Pool, gym, all the things you need in a club. And so come check out Auburn University Club. Obviously, find them online, AU Club. And so definitely give them a look. We'll, like I said, we'll talk a little bit more about them as we get towards the end of the show.
Yeah, great spot to be. Today we're going to start off talking about the Oklahoma game. I think that's the best way. Look, it's still being discussed. The roster's still being discussed. John Cohen put out a statement on Thursday talking about specifically the illegal substitution play with Satania's touchdown. The SEC put out a statement earlier. The thing that I've kind of seen a lot of people say is, look, can't let Oklahoma beat Auburn twice.
Yes.
Can't happen twice. You've got to be able to move on. And so as a team, for Auburn's sake, you hope that they can, especially headed to another top 10 opponent out there kind of in the West.
Absolutely. It's something that Hugh Freeze talked about today. We had a chance to catch up with him Thursday. Usually get 7 or 8 minutes with him after the Thursday practice. So basically the last time they're on the field together, other than a walkthrough on Friday, we get a chance to talk to Hugh Freeze today, and it's something he talked about. He said, look, that's one of the things is the back-to-back road games. How do you handle that? How do you deal with it? How do you respond after you probably felt like you gave one away? Even with everything that happened, I think this is an Auburn team that feels like there were opportunities missed in every facet of the game last Saturday that cost them a chance to win the game. I think you look, and obviously special teams, you had so many mistakes that cost you and were harmful for you. Offensively, you took some sacks, you had some sacks, you missed a couple of shots down the field, and you look defensively, and it's pretty interesting, Chris, because we talked to guys on Tuesday, and we talked to Malik Blockton. He said, look, the offense gave us the lead with 7 minutes left, and we didn't hold it up. And so I think even defensively, they're like, hey, look, that's what we're supposed to do, and they felt like they let the offense down. And so it's an opportunity again, but I do think you're right. I think you have to go, hey, get rid of it, flush it, get to the next game. And it's easier said than done when you feel like, man, you had it all right there. It'd be different. If you lose 30-15, you go, I can flush that one. It's hard when you go, look, you did all these things to put yourself in a position to give yourself a chance to win, and a couple of bad calls, several bad calls, questionable calls, and then those missed opportunities I think were really big. Can you respond, and can you get off to a good start in College Station? That's going to be a big deal.
Jason, you mentioned flushing it. We're not quite ready to do that. Some of the things that we should touch on, special teams. Y'all talking with Freeze today, he said that Alex McPherson hit from 50 twice during Thursday's practice, which is great news for this Auburn team. I think, especially after the kick we saw from Connor Gibbs last weekend, I think it was already reaching the point of like, look, if you can't send Alex out there, it's probably 4-down territory, or if it's a really long 4th down, you might just have to punt it, because at that point, attempting that field goal, and we saw it go so wrong with Connor, you're giving them the ball at that spot anyway. If you don't go for it, you're giving up that field position. Hugh mentioned punt. Malcolm Simmons is still going to be back there, but they obviously don't want a repeat of what happened last weekend, where he's sprinting into the end zone to catch a ball. Kickoff coverage or kickoff returns, again penalties. That special teams continues to plague Auburn, and it's something that has to get cleaned up.
Uncharacteristic bad snap on a punt as well. That's not normal. I think the first thing you mentioned is maybe one of the key things of this. Alex McPherson is kicking the ball better, got more strength. It feels like if he can carry that into Saturday, and you feel like, hey, he's good from 50, then you probably give yourself the 35-yard line. It's felt like it's been the 30. Maybe you extend it to the 35 and go, maybe the situation, the things you're looking at, maybe you say, hey, look, in the right situation, downwind a little bit, maybe you go, hey, we'll get it to 52 with Alex McPherson. But I do think what you can do now, it feels like it anyway, is it feels like once you're inside the other 50, then you can absolutely start to tailor what you're calling on offense. And then you go, look, if it's 3rd and 7 and you're going to try to get 3 or 4 yards, and if you only get 1 yard or get stopped short, then you punt the ball. If you get to 4th and 2 and you're at the 38, then, hey, that's a situation now to go for it instead of maybe the 55-yard field goal that you might have tried with a certain guy. So, yeah, I think it gives you options now and allows you to maybe tailor what you're doing offensively in terms of play calling.
Yeah, Jason, the other thing coming out of that game was, of course, the discourse about the offensive line, the sacks, talking with Hugh. He reaffirmed kind of what Nathan had wrote, I think on Sunday, saying it was pretty close to 50-50 in terms of, look, some of those are on the offensive line, some of them are on Jackson just holding the ball too long. Hugh said a couple times this week, look, Jackson needs to just be a little bit more aggressive with the ball.
Yeah.
You don't want to be giving it away, and that's something that he's done a great job of so far this year, is protecting the football and no turnovers. But there comes a point, especially when you've got guys like Cam Coleman, had a guy like Horatio Fields, now Perry Thompson, Malcolm Simmons, those guys, give them a chance. Throw it up a little bit more, be willing to do that. And so going into the game this week, they want Auburn to be a little bit more aggressive, or Arnold to be a little bit more aggressive. And with the offensive line, I think it was you that asked on Monday, maybe someone else asking about could they mix up the offensive line a little bit, with Tutal Miller being that 6th man. So far, it seems like it'll be the same 5 guys out there on Saturday.
Yeah, I do think you'll see, hey, no hesitation if you say, look, this is not going good. This is not what we need to do. Somebody's struggling. I do think you've got options now on the offensive line. Obviously, Tutal's a guy that can play tackle or guard. We saw Kale Ellis go in, and I thought really do a good job at center last week in a short stint. That's a guy that maybe you can play at guard because we see him get some reps at guard. But obviously, Drake Carter's in there. I mean, you've got some bodies now that give you the potential to okay, if somebody's not playing well, to jump in there and give it a go. So, but I think you're right. I think it'll be the same starting group, and we'll see how they respond. They should have some pretty good, I would say, energy to go into this one. As far as Jackson Arnold, I 100% agree. Even from the sideline Saturday, it felt like there were situations where there was time to throw the football. And yeah, I don't think you need to put it in harm's way a bunch, but there's situations, 3rd and 10, you're on maybe the 45, where you go take a shot down the field, and if it's an interception, it's probably as good as a punt. But you give yourself a guy to give you. That's one where you can't take that sack, and so I think there's some opportunities there to take a shot. And you mentioned something that will be worth watching Saturday. Horatio Fields had surgery today on his foot while we were there. He said it just happened. The surgery happened this morning, and so Christian, a guy that we've seen a lot, we've talked to a lot, all the talent in the world. Now it's an opportunity that Perry Thompson hasn't had to this point, and now he's going to have that opportunity Saturday. And man, it's there for the taking for him. And if he can seize it, he's a guy that physically gives you a boost outside. Horatio's a good player. Perry Thompson physically is a guy that gives you more weapons. Can he go out and make those plays? It's going to be something to watch.
Yeah, at a minimum, he probably gives you a boost in the run game.
Yeah.
Because Perry Thompson is one of the most physical blockers out there at receiver that we've seen out of a wide receiver. But as you mentioned, he's only really been out there in spurts. He's played a couple of plays, a handful of plays, nothing really extensive. It's now or never in a sense for him. This is your chance. This is your opportunity.
Because you look right now, and Sam Turner's a guy that is right there, the true freshman from Atlanta, another kid that we love. Sam had a really good spring and hasn't – when you get into the fall, it's a little different because you start to game plan and you're not as involved as other guys. But the one thing we know from Sam Turner is ball skills. That guy has elite ball skills in terms of his catching the football, the back shoulder throws, all those things. Sam is really good at that. He's a big physical dude too. So you look at it and you think about those two guys and you think about Bryce Kane. Maybe not ideally, it doesn't give you the big body that you have, but you can move Malcolm Simmons outside and maybe get Bryce Kane some looks. So to me, those are the three guys, but Perry Thompson being first, Christian, that we're going to see more of. And Hugh Freeze talked about it last week, trusting the other guys. It was trusting the backside away from Cam Coleman, and that was Horatio Fields. Now the backside from Cam Coleman is going to be Perry Thompson. There's going to be some one-on-one opportunities, and probably the strength of Perry's game is straight line speed, deep ball. And I would not be surprised to see 3 or 4 of those this week and see what happens.
Perry's also sneaky shifty for his size. Maybe not crazy quick in the intermediate game, but if you give him a screen, he can make a guy miss here or there. We've seen him do that. Now, that was back in high school football, but he was playing against some really, really talented guys. As for Horatio, like you mentioned, had the surgery today. Haven't heard how it went. You guys were out there. But for him, he can't put any weight on it for 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
And I'm trying to think back to what Brandon Frazier had. Was it a broken foot last year
and
as
so
well?
You start thinking about going 2 weeks. Obviously, you got a few days here. Then you have a bye week. Then you have Georgia. So you start thinking probably Missouri at the earliest, but it's probably even a couple of weeks after that.
Yeah, that's when you can even put weight bearing.
That's it. So I'm talking about you're after Georgia would give you 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks. That's only a few days of putting weight back on it. Missouri would give you another week of that. That'd be 3.5 weeks out. Probably not there. So you're looking at probably 3 games at a minimum, even with a bye week. So you're talking about close to a month, I would imagine. So yeah, it's an opportunity for sure for Perry Thompson and these other guys.
Yeah, he'll probably be good to return this year. A guy that I mentioned yesterday, maybe a medical redshirt candidate, but if he recovers in time, if it kind of goes with the timeline we would expect, probably could see him again this year. You mentioned Cale Ellis earlier. He'll definitely be on standby because Connor Liu is headed into the game. Right now he's listed as questionable. We fully expect him to play. We talked with him after practice on Tuesday, and he's like, I'm not missing the game.
Yeah.
He's like, I'll be out there. But he is dealing with a sprained MCL, especially offensive line, center position. I feel like more than maybe some other spots that would be a tough injury to deal with, although I can't say I've ever sprained my MCL or played offensive line. So that's more guessing than anything else.
Yes.
But Cale Ellis, definitely a guy that needs to be ready to go. I was a little surprised that he was the first one out there. We've seen in practice a lot. We've seen Dylan Wade rep at center.
Dylan
Senda.
Yep.
And so I thought it'd be one of those two guys, especially on the road. When Connor went down, and then I'm watching at home on TV, and Cale was the first one out there. I'm like, okay, here you go, the youngest guy in college football, but he held his own. But Connor should be good to go, so Cale will be back in that backup spot. Other injuries to watch going into this game: Jay Crawford, huge one. He was listed as probable on the first injury report. We saw him out at practice on Tuesday. Pretty much a full participant. Went through team stuff.
Still looked a little tender.
I was going to say in the receiver DB portion, which was in period 7, which is the final period that we're out there, he came up a little bit gimpy after a jump ball. Didn't see him do another one of those reps, but again, he was listed as probable. So, look, at this point of the season, no one is 100%. And so if he can be out there, which it's trending that direction, that would be huge for a secondary that is going to be tested heavily.
Absolutely. No, Jay Crawford being out there would be big. I do think we saw, you mentioned young guys. We saw Cale Ellis jump in there last week. We saw even more of Blake Woodby last week as well. And I think we'll continue to see more of him based on the way he competed. And he's a guy that gives you some options because, Christian, he's a thicker guy, a little bit bigger. He could play the nickel. I think he could play corner. And this week, and we'll talk on it a little bit more, but this week A&M is not a big physical receiver group, but it's a bunch of little quick guys that can really shift you. And maybe you play more corner than safety at that nickel spot this week. And if so, maybe Blake Woodby's the guy that gets out there. Maybe you move Champ Anthony back inside to play a little nickel. I think all hands are on deck, and I think that's something you might consider because A&M they don't have the big 6'4", 220-pound wide receivers. It's the little guys, kind of like Oklahoma, and when they started doing some of that underneath stuff, it makes it really tough.
I think you have to, and no disrespect to Sylvester Smith, to Kensley Ledore-Faustin. Kensley especially played pretty darn well against Oklahoma, but I think a guy like Blake Woodby matches up, and Rayshawn Pleasant moving him inside. I think those guys match up so much better in this game, when a guy like Mario Craver moves inside. You just don't want Sylvester Smith on
CJ Concepcion, who is a freak as well. It was in NC State the last couple of years. I mean, those are two dynamic guys, and they are far and away the top 2 receivers for Texas A&M. And so when you start looking at them, those are the guys that you have to worry about first. But I mean, Terry Bussey's a guy that's really dynamic. Doesn't have a ton of catches, but he is a guy that has the potential to be a game breaker type 2.
Other guy worth watching on the injury report, Amaris Williams. He was listed as questionable. I think I might have said on Tuesday's injury report on Wednesdays. That was the first one that we got. But look, we saw him out there at practice on Tuesday. He played a couple of snaps against Oklahoma. Honestly, I was kind of surprised by that. Because
he did. And it was pretty early, too.
Yeah, at the practice viewing window we had before the Oklahoma game, his arm looked kind of like it was dangling. It didn't look great, but he was out there, played some snaps. So he's a guy that you probably have in this game. You would think he'd be available.
Yeah, I think the thing that no matter what I think we're going to see is I think we're going to continue to see more of Jared Smith. Saw him make a couple of really good plays against Oklahoma. The physicality is continuing to grow for him. There's never been a question about the athleticism, the speed off the edge. I mean, he runs down, John Mateer last week or somebody on the edge and doesn't get the horse collar because he grabs him from the jersey on the shoulder, makes a play. I mean,
just a crazy length.
Really athletic play. And so I think we're going to continue to see more of Jared Smith in that role. And I think it'll be interesting when you talk about what you have to deal with this week and you look at the other side, you look at the quarterback. And Kristen, this is a guy that we saw come through Auburn's quarterback camp, 2 years ago, 3 years, maybe 3 years ago, came through on the summer, and you look and now this is athletic. This is the most dynamic running quarterback that Auburn has faced this season, and it's not even close. How can you combat that? Well, first of all, you got to stop the run and put them in third and long passing situations, and then maybe you go Keldrick Falk, Amaris Williams, Kieron Crawford, Jared Smith, try to hem him up with really athletic guys up front. Maybe not necessarily a lot of blitz, but you don't want to let him get outside and run the football, and you can combat that with some of these guys as long as they, stay in their rush lanes and stay at home. That could be something to watch this weekend.
Yeah, Jason, before we keep going into that game, probably should touch on basketball.
Yeah.
A little bit of news over on that front. Bruce Pearl announces that he's retiring on Monday. Stephen Pearl was instantly announced as the next head coach, 5-year contract. He had his introductory press conference yesterday on Wednesday. I think one of the biggest takeaways from that, and you wrote about it, was Stephen was very adamant. He said, John Cohen did not hire me. He hired this staff. He said that he hired the best staff in college basketball, a staff that's been together for a really long time. A guy like Ira Bowman has been here for forever. Mike Burgomaster been here a long time. Corey Williams has been here for a couple of years now as well. That was one of the biggest themes for me exiting that press conference was, look, we want to keep this train going. We want to keep it exactly how it is. It's going to look different with Stephen at the helm, but we want to keep the same core values.
Yeah, no, I think, timing is always important no matter when you do something. The timing of this made this 100% the right call. Maybe if this happens in April and you're not in the Final Four and you're going, okay, we're making a change, maybe you open it up. John Cohen said, look, we've been expecting this for a couple of years, preparing for it. So they've had a list of guys. They've had those conversations already when you start talking about what would you do. And to me, it was a no-brainer that it was going to be Stephen Pearl in this moment at this time because of what you said. You keep the entire staff there, but also, I mean, you're got guys now that you have a window of 30 days to be able to go in the transfer portal. Now, there's not a ton of options. That still doesn't keep people from coming after guys, and so having that continuity, stability, even though there's a change, I thought was vital to this season, the future of the program, because I mean you got a lot of new players on this team. You got a bunch of transfers, but it's not a bunch of one-year transfers. So you got guys that can stay a couple of years. You got a couple of freshmen that'll be big, and obviously maintaining the roster. And I thought one of the things that we've been harping on from football for a long time, and Stephen Pearl talked about retention, how valuable that is. And you look at it this year, there was no retention because everybody was gone. They were all seniors except for a couple of guys. But can you retain these guys next year and only replace 2 or 3? That's what they've done a good job of, and it's why they've been consistent. And I thought it was interesting to hear him say, look, retention's important. You talked about NIL, but I thought he knocked it out of the park with his comments, the way he did things, and we're looking forward to see how he puts his own stamp on the program moving forward.
Yeah, I think we should touch on Bruce Pearl, a guy that you covered the whole way. I obviously covered for a handful of years and then moved into a recruiting role, so I didn't get to cover him as much. But the legacy, I mean, the best coach in Auburn basketball history.
Yeah, it is a short list of coaches in any sport at Auburn that you put up there with Bruce Pearl. He put Auburn basketball not back on the map, because Auburn basketball at times has done things, but like I said, in my history of Auburn basketball and thinking about it, it's always been more about players, whether it was Charles Barkley or Chuck Person or Chris Porter. And you think about it, it's always been player-led. Now, you had some teams, though, that did pretty good and made runs to the Elite Eight in 1986. You've had some of those situations. But now when you think about Auburn basketball, you think about Bruce Pearl because of 2 Final Fours and 5 SEC championships. And as somebody, like I said, I've said this week a couple times, but as somebody who grew up listening to Jim Fife call Auburn basketball games on the radio, and when I was little, you had a Nerf basketball hoop, and I'm playing basketball in my living room with a Nerf hoop listening to Auburn basketball on the radio. If somebody had told me even then, you know what, Auburn's going to go to 2 Final Fours and win 5 SEC championships, like there's no chance. In doing this job, no way. Because I've seen so many bad basketball teams. To see what it has become under Bruce Pearl, just simply incredible. And he set the bar, but he also has the program now in a position to where, look, you can continue to climb. I've said this week too, if Stephen Pearl's name was Stephen Jones, then not one person in this country would go, oh, what's that about? He happens to be the coach's son, but this reminds me a lot more of John Shire taking over at Duke than it does about a coach's son taking over for his dad. Because John Shire was a longtime assistant, lead recruiter, a guy that was very involved in the day-to-day operations of a basketball program. Now he had a year to be the interim guy, which made it a little bit different, but this feels more like Duke than it does about a guy taking over for his dad.
Yeah, look, I covered basketball around COVID year, roughly around that time, so 5 years ago now. The change I've seen in Stephen Pearl from then, going to open practice, seeing him coach, at that time, scout team was one of his biggest priorities at practice. The change I've seen in his personality and his leadership is drastic. He was a different person at the introductory press conference from one of the last times that I was really exposed to him and really around him. It was a different person. And, that goes back to over the past couple of years, there's been times where he's led practice. Yep. He led practice a lot this summer. He was at a lot of the media events, Ambush, things like that. He has been training for this opportunity. The quote he said is, I've been training for this my whole life, basically.
Yep.
He's been with BP since day one, as he said. He's a different personality than Bruce, and people will have to adjust to that because Bruce, one of his biggest strengths is being a salesman, being able to get, it's something that you touched on the podcast earlier this week, saying, look, Bruce got people to buy into Auburn basketball even before it was trending up.
Correct.
And so that's something, and Stephen inherits a different Auburn basketball too, so now it's different. But he's grown really so much, in my opinion.
No, you can see. I mean, we see the natural maturity as you get older and you get a family and you do those things. And man, you're right. I think that's been one of the biggest things. And you touched on something else too. The ability to go out and do it, the ability to go out and run practices. I think that's the thing that maybe has been that people miss as much as anything is you look at Bruce Pearl and he looks like this overwhelming personality that runs a program and he's involved in every little facet of it. And he is because he's the head coach. But he let his assistant coaches coach more than any other basketball coach I've ever seen. They did all the scouting. They ran the scout. They presented it to the players. You got Stephen Pearl running the defense. You have Mike Burgmaster running the offense. He allowed his coaches to coach. And talked to Ira Bowman yesterday, and he's like, look, that's why I stayed. Because he could have gone to other places, but you're not going to other places to get what you have at Auburn because of the experience that Bruce Pearl gives you. So I think that's a big deal now as you transition to Stephen Pearl.
I think one final quick thing on basketball, and you touched on it with the portal opening up. Nathan asked Stephen about that at his introductory press conference. He said, look, everybody has been at the first two practices. I think everybody was there at today's practice as well. So you still have to kind of sweat it out a little bit through these 30 days because that's what college athletics is now with agents and everything and NIL and all that stuff. But so far, so good on that front in terms of retaining the roster, keeping everyone intact because that 30-day window did technically open once the head coach changed. Jason, moving back to Texas A&M, as you guys get ready to hit the road yet again, as does Auburn. It's an interesting matchup for this team. You feel like, Free said it, A&M is maybe a more complete team, but you don't feel like Auburn's outmatched.
No, I mean, we thought last week, I mean, look, that's a very winnable game for Auburn last week. Going into this one, I feel like Texas A&M's offense is probably a little bit better than Oklahoma's offense. I don't think there's any shape, form, or fashion going into this one that I think Texas A&M's defense is close to Oklahoma's. Now, I may be proven wrong Saturday, and they may step up, but they've given up more than 20 points to UT San Antonio and to Utah State, and they gave up 40 to Notre Dame. Oklahoma has not given up points to anyone except for Auburn scoring 17, and Auburn had opportunities to do more against that Oklahoma defense. So Oklahoma was pressure, twisting, stunning. Texas A&M a little bit more straight up defensively. Big physical team. The difference for me in this one on the other side is A&M's willingness to run the football. Now, they haven't run for 200 yards, but they got a couple of really good backs, big, experienced offensive line. Can you make them one-dimensional and do what you continue to do, which is play the run really well? If you do that, and if you're Auburn, you got to feel like you like your chances Saturday.
On the other side, Auburn has a much better chance to run the ball in this game than they did against Oklahoma. Freeze said it today that he thought that he might have given up on the run game a little bit too early against Oklahoma. I don't necessarily disagree with that. We saw Cobb break off that big run later in the game. But against Texas A&M, UTSA ran for a bunch.
Ran for over 200 yards.
Notre Dame ran for a bunch. I don't know what Utah State did.
It was 78 yards, something like that, which is –
But it's Utah State.
It's Utah State. The key is, can you avoid the negative play? And as Hugh Freeze said today, he said the dirty runs. And I had somebody send me a message going, what is that? I was like, that's the 3 or 4 yard run on first down that keeps you in second manageable.
You get hit at the line of scrimmage
and
you
get a couple
forward.
of yards. Last week, you mentioned it, Jeremiah Cobb has the big run, and Damari Alston had a 15-yard run. Those guys combined for 13 carries. The other 11 carries outside of those two plays went for 17 yards. And so you go, man, the yards per carry looks pretty good. Yeah, but 11 of those runs were for 2 yards or less and totaled 17 yards total. So that means, look, you're in second, third and long, or if you're second and 10 and you try to run to get a few yards back and you get 1 yard, then you're third and long. So can you get those 3 or 4 yard runs and avoid the negative 1 yard run? Those are the ones that kill you, and so that's the thing to look for. Can you keep the chains moving and stay in positive yard situations?
Jason, as we start to wrap up the show, who do you got, and what's the biggest reason why?
Yeah, I've gone back and forth. I picked Auburn to beat Oklahoma last week, and I think they should have. I thought they were in position to win the game, and because of that, it's almost one of those situations where I got to see it, and I think Auburn will be in a position to win this game again. I think they're going to have opportunities to win this game, but I have to see them make those plays, and they haven't done that yet. We've been waiting for, hey, somebody to step up, make that play. So I picked A&M to win a close game, but I think Auburn's absolutely going to have every opportunity to win this one, just like they did last week at Oklahoma. But, again, until I see Auburn make that type of play, whether it's going up and getting a ball in traffic, creating a turnover, stopping somebody on third down, win the game on the line, making a play in the kicking game, they just haven't made that one play. And sometimes all it takes is one. I think that's what this team needs. Just one time, somebody to make that play. Because I think if you do, the dam may break. But I need to see it happen, and still waiting on it.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I picked A&M to win, I think, 38-34. I think this has a chance to be pretty high scoring. I also think it has the chance to be one of those classic, like, oh, it's going to be a shootout, and then it's 20-17.
That's what I felt like. I felt like everybody was pointing so much to offense. I'm like, this will be the one where both defenses play really well, and you look up and it's 21-17 because you just never know. But I do think Auburn is going to have every opportunity again because I think this is a team Christian, we talked about coming into the year. You felt like this was an Auburn team that for the first time was talented enough to go play anybody, anywhere, and have a chance to win. I think that's the case Saturday. As long as you do something you haven't done, as long as you don't turn it over a bunch, then you'll be okay.
Yeah, I said before the Oklahoma game, I thought Auburn would go 1-2 in its next 3 games. Well, I boxed myself into a corner. I'm picking Georgia in a couple weeks, or I'm picking Auburn to beat Georgia in a couple weeks, because now I've picked Auburn to lose 2 games now. Touch on a couple more things here real quick. SEC schedule. They released the 2026 through the 2029 opponents. 2028 is a gauntlet.
Yeah.
But I thought they did a good job for the most part.
There's nothing you can really do. When you have 16 teams, there's not a whole lot you can do. The thing I do wish is that I wish they'd just go ahead and play 10 games to have an even number of 5 and 5, because that's the hard part, especially because of the way it falls for Auburn. Because of the first year being the even year, that being the 5-game year for Auburn, you got 5 road games, and 2 of those are Alabama and Georgia. That's brutal. I don't care who the other 3 are. That makes it really difficult from an Auburn perspective. And we had people ask, why didn't they flip the games? Well, the only way to flip it would have been for Alabama to say, yeah, we'll come to Jordan-Hare Stadium 2 years in a row. I don't think that was going to happen. The only other way for it to happen would be for Auburn to go to Georgia 3 straight times, which I don't think Auburn was interested in doing either. So you're stuck. I mean, yeah, had it happened in 26 for the 27 season, then Auburn could have returned to favor. You could have gone to Georgia 2 years in a row, and then you could have evened the schedule out. But because it fell this year with the playoff things, you're now left with that 5-game road trip, Alabama and Georgia, along with everybody else. It's going to make it really difficult in those even years.
Jason, maybe the best weekend in college football in terms of games. Best weekend in sports. We got the Ryder Cup.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
But on Saturday, Penn State hosting Oregon. Notre Dame is at Arkansas. LSU at Ole Miss. Tennessee at Mississippi State could be sneaky good.
I think it's an interesting game.
Alabama at Georgia. Kentucky at a South Carolina team that is just dwindling right now. We've got some good Friday night games.
Yeah, I mean, Ohio State, Washington's they've been pretty tough at home. That's an interesting game. And I like this schedule. Is there anybody that's on maybe upset alert for you? Anybody that you look at in those games going, man, they better watch out?
You picked Ole Miss. I love that pick. I picked LSU because I'm a coward. But I really want to pick Ole Miss.
I haven't seen anything from LSU that makes me believe yet in their offense to go out and win this game in Oxford. And the other one, I really think Arkansas's got a great shot to beat Notre Dame
too. Yeah.
And so those are 2 that I'm watching to see what happens there. Obviously, looking forward to Saturday and that Alabama-Georgia Saturday night. I have no idea. I don't have any idea.
I picked Georgia, but I really feel bad about it.
I picked Georgia too. But I look at it and look, they gave up 40 points to Tennessee the last time out. Alabama's offense is dynamic. Alabama's defense probably be a little bit better than they were against Florida State, I would think.
And Georgia's offensive line is
They played great against Tennessee, but you don't know if that was Tennessee or if that was Georgia, Gunnar Stockton. So many questions, and that's the interesting part about college football. We're going into week 5, and there's still questions I have about pretty much everybody in the country. And that's what's crazy about this season, the way the sport's played now, that we're heading into almost the halfway part of the season, and I'm still unsure about a whole lot of folks.
Yeah, Oregon at Penn State was our game of the week.
I have no idea.
Look, I don't gamble. I don't give out gambling advice. But if I did, Oregon plus 3.5 to me feels like a great bet. I really believe in Dan Lannon.
I'm not a Drew Aller believer at all. I just wonder about Dante Moore in Oregon going on the road for the first time. He's played on the road at UCLA. I just wonder about going there in this environment and Penn State's running game, the things they do. I think it's going to be a very interesting game.
I picked Oregon to win by 13. I feel confident.
We're confident there.
That was our game of the week. However, Patrick has a game of the week. Patrick, behind the scenes of the show, he's been running his Pat's sexy pick of the week as he destroys his third microphone.
That's tough.
Hopefully he's got things changed.
Yeah, I have my camera on too here so they can see me as well. Yeah, so UCLA Northwestern, bad versus worse. I think it's the worst offense in the country versus the worst defense in the country. I think If Northwestern can pull this out, we go from, it's tornado warning, tornado watch. I think we're in a 0-12 warning versus UCLA.
I don't think there's any
we're
question.
in an 0-12 watch.
I think you're
so
absolutely
I'll go
right.
with Northwestern in that one.
I would. As Northwestern's at home, right?
Yes. On the lake, that fake stadium.
I would go with.
It's a great stadium.
Yes, I would go with Northwestern to win that one. And you're right. If you don't win that one for UCLA and you start going, look, what's it look like down the road for you? Obviously, you've already made a coaching change, and but you're Penn State at home, at Michigan State, Maryland at home, at Indiana, Nebraska
tough.
at home, at Ohio State, Washington at home, and then USC in the Coliseum. I don't think you're winning one of those if you don't win this one. I don't like your chances of winning this one either. But yeah, you're right, because of the craziness of it. It's a fun game to kind of pay attention to. I don't know that I'm watching it, but I'm paying attention to it a little bit.
Be watching it.
Something has gone drastically wrong if I'm watching that
Correct,
game.
absolutely.
Every channel on my TV
a disaster,
has
yes.
gone out.
Yeah.
Europe is up by 10 in the Ryder Cup. I mean, a disaster has to strike for me to be watching that game. Jason, I think probably wrap up the show there. Before we do wrap it up, I want to thank Auburn University Club again for having us out. It's a great spot to be. Look, we are going to hammer it home because we believe it. One of the best golf courses you can find in the state of Alabama, especially in Auburn. Fantastic food.
Yep.
We're sitting here and people are eating in the restaurant next to us, and I'm just sitting here
salivating.
salivating. Patrick's having to cut the drool out of
the wings, the sandwiches, the specials. They got fish special going on right now. Incredible, and people even better. So definitely get a chance to get in the Auburn area. If you live outside the area and you get in town, come check them out. If you live here, give it another look because this place is spectacular.
Yeah, that's the thing. Even if you don't live in Auburn, they offer memberships
outside
for
the area.
that are
Absolutely.
outside the area, and they are fantastic deals. They're deals that you cannot find at a lot of country clubs for what you are getting here.
No question.
And the perks. So definitely come check out AU Club. Thank you for having us out. Nathan, if you're listening, hope you feel better. We need you because
get ready.
I don't think I'm competent enough to cover the game on Saturday. I can cover Thursday Night Live, but I don't know if I can handle covering the game as well. So feel better, Nathan. Appreciate everyone for tuning in here. Come check us out at auburnundercover.com. We'll have full coverage of the game, of course, the guys out there in College Station, and coverage of just about everything else. Especially heading into the bye week, we'll have some baseball stuff. I was out getting some golf stuff earlier today. Maybe some stuff on guys on national championship teams that got recognized.
Absolutely.
Look, the train keeps rolling.
That's right. Let's see if we can do it going into the bye week with a win. That'd be good, and I think it would make a whole lot of folks feel a lot better.
Yeah. Thanks everyone for tuning in.